Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger. I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the domain name authority. My goal is to interview a different domainer every week, find out how he or she built their business, learn about their experiences, learn about what worked, what didn't work, and take all of those ideas and tactics and hand them to you so that you can go out there and build an incredible domaining career yourself. Then you can come back here and do what today's guest is doing, teach others how you did it so that they can go out and build a successful career. So let's get to the interview. How do you build a domain name portfolio that will make you $100,000 per year in profit? Joining me today to answer this question is Andrew Allemann. Andrew has been in the domain name industry since 1997 and has been quoted in the New York Times, the Sydney Morning Herald, eWeek, and many other acclaimed papers and magazines. In addition to being the founder and editor at Domain Name Wire since 2005, Andrew recently became Senior Vice President in charge of business development for DirectEye, the first ICANN accredited registrar of India. At DirectEye, Andrew works with their media businesses, including Media.net, Skenzo, and Big Jumbo. So first of all, welcome Andrew, and thanks for doing the interview.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with a question that sort of sets the stage of your domaining background. How many domain names do you currently own, and roughly how do they break out by category?
Just over 1,000. I think it's around 1,200 now. Category-wise, I guess there are a lot of different categories you can split domains by. It's primarily .com domains. I have a few. I'd say about 30% of the portfolio is some sort of play on local. So for a city name attached to something like an allergist or plumber, doctor, that sort of thing. And then the rest is really a pretty good mix across the board. Things I came across, topics I came across reading publications, just things I'm familiar with in general. And then there have been a couple niches that I've attacked over time that we might discuss later. Some of them have been great niches. Some of them haven't worked out at least as quickly as I thought they would. So
great. All right. And so one of the most interesting bits of research that I ran across was a book called The Domain Game, which many people in the domain name industry are familiar with. It was published back in 2008 by David Kessmodel. And in it, you're quoted as saying that you own 100,000 domains in 2008, for which you earn
1,000.
1,000 domain names.
1,000.
In 2008, you owned 1,000 domain names, for which you earned $100,000 in profits. Was that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the time it was, which was probably '07 when he interviewed me. You know, the world has changed a lot in domain names. Back then, a lot of my money was coming in from domain parking, which we've seen take a significant turn. And, it's probably fair to say, too, that from those domains, it wasn't, just revenue off of those. Some of them were built out and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So the world has changed a lot since then. But yes, that was definitely true back then. And I think there's just a shift in where people are earning revenue now from parking to different things.
Great. All right, I'm going to come back to that $100,000 that you earned and how many domains that you built out and how you're shifting your portfolio now. But first, I want to give a little bit of background and learn a little bit more about you. From my research, I found out that you studied finance at the University of Texas at Austin, and it was at the University of Texas that you first discovered domain names in the domain name industry. Could you tell us how that first happened?
Yeah, basically I wanted to create a website, and the first step you have to take there is to get a domain name. And so I learned, I was not a developer. I don't have a technical background at all, but I had a friend who was showing me how to create a basic website. And so I went out and registered a domain name through, at the time, it was Network Solutions for $70. And from there, I kind of realized that although I wasn't a techie, I had business foresight and could register domain names much better than I could develop the websites, even though I was doing that at the same time.
Great. And do you remember the first domain you registered for that website?
I think at the time it was something related to, which at the time wasn't technically illegal, but online gambling, which since then, they've clarified. But that was one of the big areas back then. Just changed somewhat given the legal structure of it now. But it was related to that. I also registered I only registered probably 30 or 40 during the rest of that decade, maybe more than that, but at $70 a pop as a college student,
Sure.
that added up in a hurry.
That's a lot of beer
So,
money.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, I don't recall the exact first one, but there were a number back then, some of which I'm sure I hold now
Yeah.
still.
Well, that's too bad you don't remember that very first domain. That would
Yeah,
be back in '97. It could have been onlinegambling.com.
it's interesting. I feel like I missed the best opportunities. I'd say the best opportunities were from 94 to 96 and then 2001 to 2003 or 4. And in both of those times, I wasn't really as actively involved as I wish I was now. So unfortunately, names like that, at least it seemed like they were already taken. But
Yeah. All right. So you graduated from the University of Texas and you became a financial analyst at a company called Trilogy Software, where you worked on doing software business development for a domain leadership.com.
Yeah, so that was a domain that the company bought, kind of in the human resources software type side. But I was working on a different project for them around aligning goals in a company. So you have your top level goals. Let's earn this much, and then they go down the company down to the very person at the bottom. Well, what does this person have to do to make sure that goal happens? Everyone's coming in from their part, and which is a huge challenge for companies, especially because if you added up the goals of everyone on the bottom, they wouldn't equal the one on the top usually. So we were tackling that. The .com bust happened shortly thereafter. So as a product, it never really came to be. I do have a patent on the methodology we came up with and such. But yeah, that's what I was doing there. So we did own leadership.com. Gosh, I haven't looked at it in ages. Maybe the company still owns it. The company is still there, but
That would be a great one to grab on the drop, wouldn't it?
yeah, it would. It would.
Great. And I do see your patent automated system and method for creating aligned goals. And I know in any major corporation, that's one of the biggest issues that human resources and a leadership team can face.
Right.
So that's
right.
that's quite a great patent to have, I would think.
Yeah, unfortunately, I guess I don't technically own it, but
Well, you wrote it, right?
But I've
right,
got my
right.
name on it, so it's
Yeah.
just
And then you left that position. You went to become you went to SBC Knowledge Ventures, which allowed you to do some technology commercialization. So you actually got your hands a little bit more dirty and learned how to commercialize software and take other people's assets and
exactly.
Can you
So
tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, we were taking technology that had been built for internal use and commercializing it. Every year, Fortune 500 spend billions of dollars solving that goals HR problem for themselves,
Right.
and then it only gets used at that company rather than being used by all the other companies. So we were basically taking those technologies, finding software companies to turn them into real products, and then taking them to market.
Which then led right into your next position. You became president and COO of Fluid Innovation, and currently I believe you're on the director of the board of directors.
Board of directors, yeah. So left, that was a startup. Started with actually one of my former colleagues from SBC. Company's still around today. I left it a few years ago, but we were trying to do the same thing, just for multiple companies rather than just one, kind of mining the assets of multiple companies.
Great. And during all that time that you were with SBC Knowledge Ventures and Fluid Innovation, were you continuing to manage your domain portfolio and spending time as a hobby?
Yeah, so I would say there was, as I mentioned, I kind of missed the 2001 to 2004 window where people like Frank Schilling and a lot of others jumped in and saw the opportunity. I was saying, oh, the opportunity's gone. I'd seen in Austin everything had imploded in the dot-com bubble, that sort of thing. When I was at SBC, I started getting back into domain names there around '04. And started to get into creating websites, mass-produced websites back in the day, and started to make a lot more money doing that than I was in my day job, right? So eventually I said, what am I doing here? And I left the full-time or the the Fortune 500 world to go pursue that. So that was kind of going on in the background there. When I started Fluid Innovation, I'd been working on another business concept which turned into Internet REIT or iREIT, but decided not to do that and go down the technology commercialization path. And then I guess it's probably about 3 years ago now, I decided to focus full-time on domain names. So it's really, I guess, been a relatively short period of time that I've been full-time on it.
Okay. So let's I want to dig into a little bit about how you've worked more full-time on domain names. But let me take you back to what you first mentioned there. In 2004, you almost went into business with Mark Ostrowski, the serial entrepreneur famous for selling business.com for $7.5 million, as well as Bob Martin, who I believe was an angel investor and friend of yours from the Austin area.
Yeah, I knew Bob, and he, I think it was maybe Christmas Eve of '04. He introduced me to Mark, and we were sitting down at a Starbucks in Houston. I remember this because it actually started snowing outside, which never happens in Houston.
Right.
And so the months after that, we kept. I would travel down to Houston. We'd brainstorm ideas, the three of us, things to come up with. Went up to New York for an SES conference and met with some investors up there. And at the end of it, we had bought the domain Internet REIT or iREIT.com. I don't remember which one we had bought at that point. But it just, the three of us together, it wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I decided to bail out on that and go into the technology commercialization side. And it, for a few years, I was kicking myself watching them raise all that money and stuff. Now, of course, it went south after that. So I guess I didn't actually miss the boat, but but that was, so I learned a lot of lessons from that. And then when I decided not to do iREIT, I knew I did want to do something more in the domain industry though. So while I was kicking off the technology commercialization, I also started domain name Wire right about then, which is March of '05. So that was basically at the exact point I decided not to do iREIT.
So tell us what lessons learned from iREIT? What were some of the lessons learned? Oftentimes a domainer may interact with another domainer, and they have some search engine optimization skills or some skills to build out websites, and they know somebody else who has a fantastic single word generic domain name that they're looking for somebody to help build out. What lessons learned did you have from that iREIT situation that you might be able to pass along to somebody else?
I think that was more, so it sounds like you're asking if you should enter into a business relationship with someone. I think it's more, in my case, it was just the personalities didn't fully mix. Okay. And if you don't feel comfortable from that standpoint, that, you just need to walk away. Because once you get tied into someone financially, it can get messy if you don't have that good working relationship, if you don't feel comfortable with the people you're working with. You have to be able to trust people 100%, and you have to feel comfortable working with them. In our case, the three of us together just it wasn't quite there. I could feel it wasn't there. Gotcha. So Mark and Bob went off, started the company, raised a lot of money. At first it raised a lot of money. I think it was making a lot of money, and then things headed kind of quickly south there as well for a couple reasons. Sure. Part of them, many of them within their control, and part outside. Obviously the business that ultimately came to be was predicated on pay-per-click earnings from Park Pages, which we all know what happened there. And then they made some decisions that landed them in legal hot water as well, which also were very harmful to the company.
Right. And today iREIT is still around, isn't it? Or is
technically it's still around.